Hey y'all, it's Ashley at Bookishrealm and I'm back with another discussion. I feel like every time I sit down to do a discussion, I'm dog tired and I don't know why that is. I think just today my mental capacity has kind of reached its highest mark. I don't have anything left in me. But I did want to sit down and record this video because it's been something that has been on my mind and something that I've kind of been seeing in the community. It was something that I was thinking about, and then it was like kind of ironic because I watched two videos back to back about people slowing their reading down and their consumption of books down. And I had been thinking about if I was reading too much, because I don't always do a good job at this. But I don't know if y'all see, like on Instagram, when people have the it's like the templates, and then you can see they track like what they've accomplished throughout the month. And I did a horrible job at that in January and February. I actually have books that I haven't even documented as having read this year, where it's got to be anywhere between 10 to 20 that I have read, and I just have not even reviewed them, marked them as currently reading. And then I have 30 books that I'm not technically currently reading. They are marked as currently reading on Goodreads. Most of those are finished. They're just kind of in a holding situation right now until I get to my reviews. And then I have read over 100 books this year. And it made me think like, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing here? And I think that one of the things that I've been taking away from the videos that I've been watching is that people feel like there's this need to overconsume the amount of books that they read because of the nature of the community. And I know that we've had this discussion before, so I'm not going to talk about this in the light of the community as a whole, because I don't want to get into whether someone else is reading too much or they're not reading it. Like, I can't make that judgment call for anyone. This is kind of one of those topics where I'm primarily just talking about myself and my experience and what I'm finding this year that is so different than years past, which this year is significantly different, and I'm going to tell you why it's significantly different. So I have been reading in a different way this year. And when I say a different way, is that I look at the number of books that I'm reading and I have instantly felt like, okay, am I spending enough time interacting with people in the real world? Like, am I setting aside a time where I am not constantly consumed by books? And yes, that time does exist. I do make pockets of time and spaces where it doesn't exist. Well, not where books don't exist, but where like I take a break from reading. Words are going to be so hard tonight because I'm so tired. I know words are going to be hard tonight. I've also questioned, like, am I slowly leading myself into a burnout? So the unique thing about my position is that I literally, which if you've been here, you know this is primarily for those of you who've never been to the channel before. I literally work with books all day long, from sunrise to sunset. I do nothing but deal with books. That is my job. What's different, I think, about this year as opposed to last year and years before is that I have leaned in heavily into children's lit. So middle grade picture books, beginner readers, children's graphic novels, beginner readers, middle grade graphic novels. I've leaned heavily into all of the youth literature. And what I have come to realize is that it takes me nothing to pick up a children's chapter book series and read that in 30 minutes. And so because I have a mentality, first of all, I'm a Virgo. If you know anything about astrology, me saying I'm a Virgo should tell you a lot about me as a person. I feel the need to document all of that stuff. And so the volume of materials that I'm reading is high. And it's piling up on me quickly. very, very quickly. And so it's made me kind of think like, oh my gosh, like, am I doing too much? Or is just because I'm consuming shorter books at a faster rate? And when I say this, I don't want people to think that this is a numbers game for me. It's really not. I am reading as much as I'm reading right now because, one, I have a lot going on in my life. And part of me is kind of concerned that that may be impacting it to a certain degree. I don't think it's completely that, but I've had a lot going on in my life since the beginning of this year. If some of you can recall what I've been going through since the beginning of this year. And so the reading is helping with coping mechanism things here. But also I made it a personal goal of mine, which I did not share here. I did not share even like work-related goals. It was a very personal and intimate goal of mine to step more into my ability to recommend and to be able to advocate for children's literature. I have always read children's lit, but not at this volume. And I know that for me and for y'all, a lot of what I do, for those of you who have younger readers in your households, or you know younger readers and you're trying to instill the love of reading in them, I know for a lot of y'all it's good recommendations, and it's me really, really honing in on my reader's advisory skills. I'm good at it because it's been my job for so long. That's what I've had to do, but I'm trying to get better. And so what we're seeing on the social media end of it is like this, what looks like an excessive amount of reading. So I think one of the things that I struggle with whenever I see this conversation come up is that reading for me is something that's very personal, very intimate, something that has gotten me through a lot of situations and still gets me through a lot of situations. It's a sense of comfort. I was a lonely kid. And so reading really was that space for me to feel less lonely, and like there were people and things that I could relate to. I think I struggle with this conversation because it's like a balancing act where you want to read for your own enjoyment, but then you have these social kind of pressures that come in. And for me, I have to now constantly check myself that, you know, remembering that reading for me shouldn't be a competition. Reading for me should not be about the numbers. Reading should be enjoyment. It should be about exploration. It should be about whatever best suits and benefits my personal life. But I can admit, and I do respect people who are, you know, saying like they're slowing down their reading because they want to be able to not only like remember what they're reading, but enjoy what they're reading and not feel like it's a competition. And so I really want to do I want to do another deep dive discussion about, like, for those of us who read as much, like how much of it do we really retain? Because I know for me, like, I write a review for almost every single book. I won't say every single book, because every now and then there'll be like 5 to 10 where I'm like, I'm just not going to do it because I just don't have the capacity to do it right now. But for almost every book that I read, I do write a review. So I am retaining the information. I think one of the things that I have stopped doing, and that I can say, even though my reading has increased, I will say that for my audiobook listening, I have slowed that down dramatically. I know people, and it works for them. I'm talking about my experience. What works for one person may not work for the next person. We're not a one-size-fits-all community. I don't listen to my audiobooks faster than 1.5 anymore. I was finding that listening to it at 2.0 was getting to the point where retention was becoming an issue. And I don't ever want to read a book for the sake of just having it as a number and having it as a completed, because I think that for me is an issue. Like, I don't like that feeling of not really remembering anything that I've read. And so to kind of combat that, I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I know people are going to ask, like, how are you really reading? And yes, we just go ahead and nip this in the bud. Audiobook listening is reading, okay? It is, because we're not going to be ableist and we're not going to negate the fact that most of us learn how to read by attending or having personal story times. It's audiobooking. You have somebody reading to you. That's how you learn how to process words, and you eventually learn how to make those connections and read. Audiobook, audible consumption of books is very, very important to a lot of us who had access to story times or were read to as children. So I don't even want to get into the nature of that argument because it pisses me off every time that I hear it. But I do have a position where I can have headphones on for most of the day, and I work from 8 to 4:30. So if that gives you any semblance of what my time looks like, and I typically do not take a lunch break anymore. I typically eat and work at the same time now. So you can only imagine how many books I really can fly through because of the nature of my position. So I know that that is an advantage that I have that some people don't necessarily have. And no, it's not a job where I'm listening to an audiobook and also trying to read something at the same time. I usually do it when I am processing something and I don't need to really actively think about it's a second nature type of thing, or if I'm checking things for conditions, stuff like that. So not anything where, like, I would never sit there and read reviews of books and listen to an audiobook at the same time. That is not the way that works. I can't. I absolutely do not do that. But even then, it's not for me. It's not a race anymore. So I think that I'm not necessarily feeling as though, although I've had to check myself, because when I looked at my Goodreads, I was like, oh sis, like, you are reading a lot right now. And I've had to check the fact that, one, I am consuming a lot of children's lit. This does not mean that it's any less valuable, but I do know that, like, reading a picture book that's 32 pages long is not going to take me as long as reading a 500-page book. So the type of materials that I'm reading this year are varying greatly than the materials that I've read in the past, and so we're seeing a greater volume because it's a shorter type of book that I'm picking up. I am consuming a lot of graphic novels and comics and manga. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I am running a second channel, and I just feel more comfortable now. Not that I haven't felt comfortable, but I feel excited in a way that I haven't felt excited before in reading all of these comics and graphic novels and doing recommendations. Like, by the time this goes up, on my second channel, I would have put up a video recommendation of, like, leveled and beginner reader comics for kids ages 5 to 7, like stuff like that. And so because I'm looking at the target audience, of course I'm going to be reading things that are shorter. But what I do know and how I do feel about this year in terms of how much I am consuming as a reader, I don't feel like I'm rushing. I think in the past, I have felt like I have rushed trying to make it through as much as I can possibly make it through, because it feels like it's like that pressure of sometimes trying to keep up with the Joneses. And that's me speaking about my personal experience. There is and can be a certain level of pressure there. And I think that this year, what makes it different and why I don't feel like I'm reading too much necessarily this year is that I just pick a book up when I feel like picking it up. I put a book down when I don't feel like reading it anymore. If I feel like one day reading 25 picture books, I'm going to read 25 picture books. If the next day I want to, read a YA romance that's going to take me a significantly longer amount of time, I do that. I think just remembering why I love to read and what makes me happy as a reader. What makes me happy at this point is what I'm putting first, because I think in my personal life, I have a lot going on that's not making me happy. And sometimes when you have external factors that are impacting your life and you can't control them, you hone in on the things that you can control. And I know that for me, reading is something that I can control. It's the one thing that I feel like I have a definitive say so in it. And it's only my decision. It's only about how I feel. And how I feel is I read what I want to read. I read for comfort. If one week I read 30 books, I read 30 books. If the next week I read nothing, I read nothing. And so what we're seeing now is, yes, this high volume of books that I'm reading. But then at the same time, you're reading what's going to make you happy. You're reading things that you're interested in. You're taking your time with things. You are putting things aside when you don't want to read them anymore. You are looking at your shelves or going to the library, and whatever best suits you is what best suits you in the moment. And I think that that's what's making a heck of a difference in my life, and why I'm like, I'm not reading too much. But I do understand where people are coming from, where they are saying like they want to slow down. They want to slow down. They want to enjoy and appreciate, the books that are in front of them. They don't want to continuously feel like they are, pushing to read because X, Y, and Z, which is why I think I struggle sometimes. And, because there was a couple of projects that I wanted to do this year that I've seen, people do, reading an author's backlist or doing this and doing that. And everyone knows I'm a mood reader. That's why y'all are like, whenever I make a TBR, y'all like, girl, please, you doing this for shits and giggles, because we all know you ain't finna finish it. I know y'all know me by now. Y'all know how I do with TBRs. But also, I don't want to force myself to do anything for views or for entertainment value. And I'm not knocking anybody that does that. If that's what you want to do, go for it. I'm talking about me personally, where I think that's why I've struggled with stuff like that, because I'm kind of like, I don't want to do that right now. I have one that I'm going to try to do on top of the Around the World project that I'm still working on, which has turned into a mind blog. I'm going to keep it 100 with y'all. I set that shit up completely wrong. I did not know what I was getting myself into, which is fine. I'm not here to talk about that. But there's one that I wanted to do, but it may or may not happen. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to pressure myself into doing something like that, because I know oh, people are going to like that. And, I'm reading because this is what I know that people are going to like. I feel like I've gotten to a space where I'm reading for pleasure and enjoyment, not because it feels assigned or necessary. There are things that I'm going to read because I'm a part of book club discussions, but that's stuff that I willingly have signed up for. But forcing myself to read things, forcing myself to consume less or forcing myself to consume more for the sake of being a part of the community, I think is just not where I am anymore. So I say all that to say, do I feel like I'm reading too much? No. And at this point, I would have read less. And every other year prior to this year, I have read less by this point. But I also have felt like this is the truest I have been to myself in a while, in terms of read what you want to read. If it is a board book and you feel like documenting that on Goodreads, girl, read that board book and mark it on Goodreads. If you want to read a beginner reader or a level reader, girl, mark it on Goodreads. If you want to mark it on Goodreads and read it. You want to read 200 graphic novels, read 200 graphic novels. I feel like I've been, I don't want to say holding myself back, but I feel like a part of me has been holding myself back. And so inevitably, those are the years where I feel like I've read less, because I think I put myself into a reading slump. I'm just doing things that are not always in my best interest. But It is still kind of wild. I mean, granted, my page count is of course going to be on the lower end of the spectrum because I'm reading shorter stuff, but I love that I have the capability right now to give such a diverse range of recommendations, which for some people, you know, it's a plus and a minus, I think, in some ways, because the positive about it is that, like, you can come to me for a lot of different things across the spectrum. You really can. But also, I don't have a brand where you can pinpoint me to one genre, and so, or one age group. And so that also is kind of like a negative, because it's like, when you come here, you're going to get a mashup of different things. And, you know, I do like that. But I don't know. I was thinking about that, y'all, because what I ended up doing is I did my, like I said, I did my March, like, update of what I had been reading and what I had been completing, because it's still middle grade March when this goes up. And I think we only have like a couple days left. By the time this goes up, we'll only have a couple days left of middle grade March. But I was looking at that and I was like, now, I ain't read this much in a month and a minute. I mean, when I did the thing, I think we, at that point, I think it was 16. Y'all know that I am horrible at math. I think we were close to 50 books at that time when I did that. And that's what made and then I had watched a couple of videos about, like, slow reading and the advantages of slow reading and just taking time and so then, you know, I'm thinking like, well, child, you done read like close to 50 books this month. Are you, like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? Like, what exactly are you doing? Are you reading too much? Do you feel like you're reading too much? So this was kind of a reflection piece for me. I think I would love to hear more from y'all about, you know, do you prefer slow reading? Do you feel like you are reading too fast sometimes because you feel the need to keep up? Do you feel the pressures to keep up with people? Are you a natural slow reader? Are you naturally a fast reader? Do you just gravitate towards reading for comfort? Do you feel like there are pressures? Are there truly pressures that exist? Or are we just kind of putting those pressures on ourselves? And how do you feel about people, you know? Because that kind of loops back to that discussion about, oh, you've only read this much because you've read picture books and comics and like, do you think that that's a valid thing, or people should just read regardless of age, target age group or format or genre? Like, let me know in the comment box below. But I feel like this was very stream of consciousness because this is something that I needed to get out my system. Y'all are just all victims to the process, literally. This is a good means of therapy for me. Like, just getting this stuff out, sitting down in front of a camera and just letting it all out. And of course within reason, because if I post this on the internet, it's forever. So I don't want to just post it on the internet and then just like, but yeah, definitely. Let me know your thoughts, your comments, your concerns in the comment box below, and I will be back with another video soon.